Welcome back, everybody, to Growthscapes Presents Contractor Truth, where we are so no frills we still can't afford bumper music. And frankly, after hearing some of the music they play on podcasts these days, I think we made the right financial decision. Anyway, if you've come to a place you're looking for polished intros, radio voices, and a host who says things like circle back and let's unpack that, well, maybe this isn't your show. But if you run a contracting business, a service company, a maintenance business, or as they call it across the pond for my European, my Australian audience, if you're a tradie and you want straight talk about growth, about profit, about how to stop your business from running and ruining your life, welcome home. I'm John, the Contractor Growth Guy, founder of Growthscapes, where we help contractors grow without losing their minds, their marriages, and their weekends. Just kidding. You might lose some of those, hopefully not the most important ones. Anyway, today we're talking about one of the biggest problems in the service business world, and that is why contractors stay stuck. And this is a big problem for a lot of you. A lot of you feel this right now. This is very much scratching you where you itch, I'm sure, because you feel stuck right now. Maybe it's the case your phone isn't ringing the way you'd like, or maybe it is ringing, and why does it more work somehow creates more stress instead of more freedom? Why some guys stay trapped at two or three trucks forever and just can't seem to break beyond that, while others build companies that actually scale. Later on in the show, we're going to hit something that every contractor needs to hear. I'm going to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart later on, and that is why persistence matters more than talent, education, or even a good start. So if you're like me and you're low on talent, I am woefully low on education. And I would not say that I'm a guy that had a good start by any means. In many ways, I did, so I don't have any complaints about that. I came from a wonderful home, um, and in that sense, I had a better start than most. But I did not start wisely in my youth. Made a lot of bad decisions myself. As far as business and finances are concerned, at least other areas I didn't make terrible decisions. But anyway, let's be honest. Some of you are listening are like one bad quote away from opening a bait shop right now. And if that's you, just stick with me. Let's get into this. Our whole job here is to help people in your situation because I've been where you are. As you know, if you listen to my first episode, this is episode 2, by the way, I was a contractor. I was not a good contractor. I understand the business. I just did not have what it takes to run it without a partner. And anyway, that's a long story. I'm not going to get into all of that. But let's talk about why it is your phone isn't ringing. I know this is true for some of you. I'm in Ontario, Canada, and we are in a construction recession in this country, which is strange because we're also in a housing shortage. But for some of you in the U.S. that are listening, this may not be your problem. I'm not that familiar with the economy in the UK and Australia, so if you're coming from those areas, you kind of decide whether you fit into this category or not, because I really don't know. But every contractor has said it, right? Things are slow, the economy is bad, people just aren't spending. Well, maybe that's it. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And let's not assume that that's the case because the unfortunate thing is that a lot of people will almost quit, just kind of throw in the towel. They're kind of resigned to the fact that, well, things are just, this is the way it is, and we're in survival mode. But I really think that those periods are periods of real opportunity in many ways. It's not my subject today to get into that, but I do think that every economic downtime is an opportunity to retool, to rethink, to review, to be introspective, and to grow. But getting back to the reasons your phone isn't ringing, a lot of times it's not a lot to do with, not as much to do with the economy, and more the fact that your business has become harder to find Sorry, I was going to say harder to find than a drywall guy who shows up on time. And I have a lot of friends in the drywall business. Please don't hate on me. Um, I jest. I'm sorry. But you've become invisible. You stop posting. You stop following up with customers. Maybe you stopped asking for reviews. You stopped checking in with old customers. You answer your phone like someone just called to tell you your taxes are overdue, and then you blame the market. And you're going to hear me say this a lot because I very much believe in cause and effect. Hope is not a business growth strategy. Hopefully, people will call is not a plan. That's a prayer mixed with denial. Customers stalk you before they call. It's never been more true than in the day of social media. They Google you, they check you on Facebook, they check you on Instagram, they want to see what social media platforms you're on. If you're on YouTube, a lot of them will look at you there. I'm not saying you have to be on all of those platforms. You should be on at least a couple of them. They're going to read your reviews, and they're going to ask themselves a question. Now, it might not be this question, but it basically comes down to this. Does this person or this business look like they're still alive? And if they go to your last Facebook post and find that it was from 2022 and your profile picture is a company truck from 3 logos ago, they're going to move on. They're going to find somebody who's more up to date. And these decisions are being made in real time in split seconds of viewing. People have no patience when they're on social media. They're moving through quickly. They're zipping through. They're deciding things quickly. So it's very serious. It's a much more critical component of your phone ringing than most of you realize. Let's talk about follow-up. Most contractors lose jobs that they should have won because they vanish after sending out the quote. And I think many of you will identify with this. You're afraid to follow up. You expect, and I know this because I might act like a tough guy here, but I had the same fear, the fear of rejection, right? So I don't text because I'm afraid what if they say no? And yeah, a lot of times they did. Now, just incidentally, I used to track my closing ratio, and it was somewhere between 45 and 50% on average, which I think is pretty good. It depends on exactly the industry that you're in and how competitive it is as to what your closing ratio will be. So that probably doesn't mean anything. It's not like I won a competition for it. But it was decent. I was an effective closer. But even I feared the follow-up, right? You don't text, you don't call, no checking in, nothing. And apparently some of us treat follow-up like it's a felony, right? Um, and we're afraid of it too. We're afraid of rejection, but we got to remember that people are busy, people forget, people get distracted. Following up is not annoying to them. It's actually professional. Then there are old customers. You're sitting on if you've been in business any amount of time and you've done good business and you've got a good work in your wake, you're sitting on a gold mine and you're acting like it's a landfill. The easiest sale is the person who already trusts you. So call them. But instead of calling them, we try to keep convincing strangers on Facebook that we're not scam artists. Reach out to those people. Send them a simple text. That's a very non-threatening means of communication that we have now. It's not a phone call. It's not landlines. It's a text. Very non-threatening. Very low pressure. Just say something very simple like, hey, just checking in. Hope everything's going well. Let us know if you need anything this season, right? Have a conversation with them. Even if you want to, say, how's the family, that kind of thing, or check in with them on a personal level too. That goes a long ways to building trust. Done. Free, easy, effective. Oh, and reviews. Okay, this one makes my blood pressure rise for 2 reasons. One is I feel like a voice in the wilderness because nobody listens to me on this, or so it seems. And the other reason is that I was in the same boat as you. I failed at this. Now remember, I was going to say remember, I'm a failed contractor. Don't do what I did. because this, I know, is a major point of failure by a lot of contractors. You finish a job, the customer is thrilled, they practically hug you like you just rescued their dog from a burning building, and then you leave without asking for a review. Why? That is one of the biggest neglects that I see contractors making. Reviews are modern word of mouth. People don't communicate the way they did 30 years ago before we had texting and social media and the technology that we do. Reviews are the word of mouth of 2026. No reviews equals no trust. No trust means no calls. No calls means you're Googling how much does it cost to start a bait shop. Back to that again, okay? You see how this all connects? The phone doesn't ring just because you wish it did. It rings because you made it impossible for people to ignore you. I've done a lot of things in life. You're going to find that out. But I sold advertising for a time. And one of the most important things in any kind of marketing or advertising, this was probably one of the first lessons that I learned when I was in the business. And yes, I sold newspaper advertising. I'm that old with newspapers back then, was being top of mind. Being in front of the buying public or your market demographic so much that the first time they think of plumbing, they think of you, or the first time they think of furnaces, they think of you, or the first time they think of having a deck built, your company name comes to mind. That's step one. That's extremely important. So if you've had trouble with the phone ringing, what you need to do is you need to start to build some consistent habits, some consistent patterns, and sometimes you need to bring in outside expertise to help you with this. And this is something actually we help a lot of our audience with, is finding the tools and the means to come up with, you don't have to do absolutely everything. You don't have to cover every base, but if you start one at a time, adding simple habits, collecting reviews at the end of every job, that's one example, right? And one by one, you begin to stack these consistent habits one on top of another. An interesting pattern will begin to emerge, and it'll emerge a lot quicker than you expected, that your phone will begin to get a lot busier. Anyway, that's step one. Then there becomes a bigger problem, and I want to focus on this in this next segment here. The bigger problem is growth, because getting busy and building a business are not the same thing. You can be busy and not build a business, and this is the I guess this is the Bermuda Triangle of contractors. This is where they get trapped. This is where they get stuck. Service businesses are hard to scale. Let me explain it like this. If you run a retail store and you're selling shoes, you can sell, and shoes might not be the best example. Probably the best example would be something that didn't take much work from the sales clerk, right? Like Walmart would be a great example of this, or groceries, right? Where there's not a lot of work involved in each transaction. In service, your transaction is your time and your expertise. So it's very, very difficult to get the profitability in a service business at scale than it is to have a retail store, for instance, okay? And you get what I mean by retail, right? You sell shoes. So once you sold out, you buy more shoes, you sell more shoes, you buy more shoes, you sell, done, right? Service is different, because in a service industry, which all contractors really are, you are the product. Your team is the product. Your reputation is the product. And most importantly, your time is the product, okay? Every quote is different. They're customized. Every customer is different. Every job is fresh. And it's a new opportunity for chaos. Most businesses are built around one person. Most contracting businesses anyway, the owner. The owner sells, the owner estimates, the owner solves problems, he handles complaints, he chases payments, he unclogs the metaphorical toilet, and sometimes the literal one. He's the one who hires people, he's the one who fires people. That is not a business. And I know this because I did it. That is self-employment with extremely high blood pressure, and eventually you hit a ceiling, and it happens very quickly, right? What happens when you reach that ceiling? You realize, you know what, I can't work 400 hours a week. It's impossible, okay? I can't answer every phone call forever. I can't personally fix every problem and still expect growth. More work doesn't create freedom, it creates more stress. And sometimes it creates prison with a branded polo shirt. Okay, you get busier, you make more money, and somehow your life gets worse. And your wife starts referring to you as the man who occasionally sleeps here. Your kids think your truck is your primary residence. Some of you are living this right now. And that's why I'm talking about this, because that's not success. That is survival. You didn't build a company, you built a job that follows you everywhere you go. It's with you every moment of the day. It's crushing, it's soul crushing. And that's the trap. And if brute force was the answer, most contractors would be billionaires, but it's not. So, what is the answer? And I'm going to say a word here that some of you are going to recoil at, but please, please stick with me, okay? The answer is systems. That is the answer. Systems. Systems are what set you free. Now, I, I know I'm fairly new to this format, but if you've been following me on social media, and the more you get to know about me, the more you'll know this. I'm a no nonsense guy. I don't like to talk in, you know, vagaries. I just can't stand it when people aren't specific and everything is ambiguous. When you hear the word systems, the first thing you think of is some corporate or government nonsense, flowcharts, consultants, a guy with loafers and no socks whose name is Trevor. And I'm not sorry, Trevor's in my audience. That's not what I mean. A system is simply a repeatable way of doing the same thing over and over and over again. It's a repeatable way of doing something. Okay? How do leads get handled? Do you have a system for that? How are quotes sent? Is there a system for that? What about follow-up? Do you have a system for that? Do you have a repeatable way for following up? How are jobs scheduled? Is that repeatable? How do customers get asked for reviews? See what I'm getting at? Consistency is the key. How do invoices get collected before your customer suddenly goes to Florida for 3 months, right? If your answer is, and this is what, if you'd asked me this 10 years ago, I would have said, well, I just, and then blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't have a system. And most of you don't have systems either. You have vibes and feelings, and vibes don't scale, feelings don't scale, chaos doesn't scale, panic certainly doesn't scale. Systems create consistency. And consistency creates trust. Trust creates growth. And a system means your receptionist knows exactly how you handle incoming calls. A system means your estimator follows the same process every time. A system means your customer experience doesn't depend on whether or not you skipped lunch and are currently arguing with your supplier, okay? This is how businesses grow. The other reason for this, I'll just point this out while I'm at it. I hadn't planned to say this, but this is the way that you take the dependency of a business's growth off of the back of individuals, okay? I'll get into this. I'm not going to give too much of my personal life out too early here, but I lost a business partner, tragically, okay? And I learned the hard way the value of systems, because there was a lot of stuff that was in his head that wasn't written down, that wasn't systemized in any way, and so if he was gone, it was gone. We relied on him far too much. We had no redundancy built in. A system also builds in redundancy to your business, okay? If you think about, I think one of the greatest examples of systemized businesses are car dealerships. Everything is a system, okay? The same thing is true of McDonald's, fast food restaurants. Everything is a system. It's a repeatable process, right? Now, it's not, excuse me, it's not going to be the same to build a system in a contracting business than it will be to build a system in a Subway restaurant because you're not inside four walls. There are a lot more variables. I get that. But a system means consistency. Your receptionist knows how to handle incoming calls. An estimator, whoever that estimator is, follows the same process every time. A system means your customer experience doesn't depend on whether or not, I think I already went over this, but um, what mood you're in or whatever. Okay, that's not how businesses grow. It's not hustle alone. It's not motivation alone. It's not caffeine and rage. It's systems. So the goal is not to work harder forever because eventually you kill yourself if you do that. The goal is to build something that works without requiring your constant emergency supervision. Okay? That's freedom. That is scale. That is what most contractors actually want. Not just more revenue, they want control, they want peace, they want profit, a business that serves your life instead of consuming it, a financial engine that produces profit, right? There's one more thing. Because even when you fix the marketing, even when you build systems, you still need, and this is my final, this is the climax of the episode for me, if you will. This is the pinnacle of it, okay? This is something that I have struggled with my entire life, okay? And I'm sure that I'm not alone. And many of you in my audience have struggled with this. There's one thing that most of us lose too early, and that is persistence. Persistence. This part really matters because success, and I'm going to give you some examples of this, success often looks like failure right before it works, okay? I am a U.S. history buff. I love American history. I love all history. I shouldn't say I just love American history. I love all history, but I've spent more time studying and reading about American history perhaps than anybody else. I hope my Canadian countrymen won't hold it against me. I probably would make a good American. I'm not sure if that puts me in your black book or not, but anyway, one of my favorite presidents, one of them, not my favorite president, but one of them was President Calvin Coolidge, Silent Cal, as he was known. He was called that because he was known for his tremendous economy of words. This is what he said. This is an exact quote. Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Genius will not. Education will not. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. So, if you're like me and you're thinking, okay, good, as I'm not like overflowing with talent and genius and education, but persistence is something that all of us can aspire to, and that hits hard because most people don't fail because they lack talent. Most people fail because they quit. And what they'll never know is that sometimes it's 5 minutes before their breakthrough. Sometimes literally. I mean, here's another one of my favorites, okay? Colonel Sanders. If you watch my reels, you probably think I eat a lot of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Ha, ha, ha. Very funny, guys. Okay, I don't, actually. Colonel Sanders, who's one of my heroes, was rejected over 1,000 times. In fact, I think the number was 1,054 sales calls he made trying to sell his Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe to restaurants. That's how he started. He knocked on the door of 1,054 restaurants. Now, imagine being told no 1,000 times over a chicken recipe, right? I mean, most of us get rejected 2 or 3 times and we start researching government jobs. Okay, this guy went 1,054 times. What if on sales call 1,053 he said, okay, that's enough? He persisted, and we know Kentucky Fried Chicken today, and we know its success story. And not only that, I'll just point this out, he was in his 70s, and he had failed he had a history of failure. He had failed many, many, many times before that. So persist. And I'm telling you these stories because I hope they're an encouragement to you. Maybe there's someone here in my audience and you are like ready to give up. You're ready to bail, okay? You've done it all. You've tried it all, and it's just not working. Don't give up. Walt Disney, I mean, he went bankrupt. Big story about that. You can research that. I'm not going to tell you that whole story. I love the story of Sylvester Stallone. I mean, he got rejected over and over again because they said he talked funny and looked weird, which was, to be fair, was accurate, but still, it wasn't very nice. Um, so he was so far down living in New York City that he had to sell his dog to be able to pay his rent. That's how far down he was. He wrote the script for Rocky, and I probably don't have the numbers right, so you can look this up, but he wrote the script for Rocky, and he was offered I think it was $100,000 by a Hollywood studio to produce the movie, but he had one he had one requirement, and he said, "I will not sell you the movie unless I can star in the movie as Rocky." And they said no. And he walked away. This is a guy who sold his dog to pay for his rent. He walked away from a $100,000 payday because he insisted on starring in Rocky. Now, I ask you this, would we know Sly today if he had taken that $100,000 paycheck? Where would he be today? We don't know. That's what persistence looks like. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times. By the way, I love these new Edison bulbs. I have two of them here in my studio. He failed thousands of times trying to invent the light bulb. And he famously said at one point something to the effect that I've learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Imagine that level of confidence, right? Most of us try assembling IKEA furniture once and decide that we're not mechanically gifted. Persistence is uncomfortable because it requires staying in the fight long after the motivation leaves. Motivation is exciting. Persistence is Tuesday morning. Persistence is following up again. Persistence is fixing the mistake. Persistence is getting up when the last deal fell apart. It's showing up when nobody's clapping. Here's another one. George Strait. I don't know how many of you are country music fans. I mean, he is known as the king of country music, right? He was big in Texas back in the 1970s. He was kind of a heartthrob back then, I'm told. And his shows were selling out. I mean, they weren't big shows, but they were selling. Went to Nashville. Tried to get a record deal. I don't know, like a dozen times. And he finally decided that if he wasn't going to get a record deal, he was going to leave the music business. And so he made a plan that he was going to go back and take over his dad's ranch. I think it was Poteet, Texas, probably like 1978. I don't know, maybe mid-1980s probably actually by this time. And decided that he would go back to ranching full time. You know, I mean, lots of people have done well at that, so hats off to him. But he thought, you know what? I think it was his wife, Norma, his high school sweetheart, who he's still married to today, said, give it one more shot. Go to Nashville one more time. Just one more time. And he did. And he got a record deal. Now, the end of that story is that most people don't realize this because George Strait is big in Texas. He's big in America. But he's not thought of as mainstream, perhaps, as the Beatles. He actually has more hits than any other artist has ever had on the charts. So it's an incredible thing to think about what would have happened if he hadn't gone back to Nashville that one last time, right? So persistence it's absolutely vital. And when you persist, you're growing. I've quit more things in life than I care to admit. And yeah, I mean, if quitting were an Olympic sport, I'd probably have a lot of gold medals. But anyway, I digress. Not going to get into that. At one point, I just think I've been there. You know, I've been where you are. I've lacked endurance. I've confused movement with progress. Fresh starts feel exciting. Staying long enough to get something done, that's where success lives. So if you're slugging it out right now in the trenches, keep slugging it out. Now make sure you're on the right path. If you're not, don't persist in a wrong path. I've learned that the hard way too. But Sometimes the difference between winning and losing is simply refusing to leave too early. That's it. It's not brilliance. It's not luck. It's not perfect timing. It's just staying. And sometimes, if you stay long enough, the timing will be right. So if your business feels heavy right now, if your growth feels slow, if you're frustrated, tired, and wondering if it's worth it, good. Because that's the part where most people quit. And if you don't, if you keep going, success is probably just right around the corner, because success is often hiding the other side of the moment where people give up. And that's why persistence matters. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Again, thanks for joining us. This is really, you've got a good microcosm today of what Growthscapes is really all about. It's not just marketing, it's about growth, about better systems, better leadership, better mindset, better follow-up, and running better businesses. Businesses that create freedom instead of burnout. Your goal was never just to stay busy. That's easy. Anybody can do that. You want a profitable, scalable and peaceful business, and that takes a lot of intention, takes systems, takes persistence, and yes, occasionally takes answering your phone like you actually want the job. So anyway, thanks for being here on Growthscapes Presents Contractor Truth. No bumper music, no fluff, just straight talk. Keep going. See you next time.